You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 235th edition of Assembly Call Radio and our 743rd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of November 11th, 2021. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Well, for this week's banner moment, there are a lot of things to pick from, even outside the world of IU basketball. From a soccer perspective, the men's team advanced to the finals for, I believe, the fourth straight year in the Big Ten tournament. And as many of you saw, I think Roman Celentano's incredible series of saves was the top play on SportsCenter, which was just absolutely unbelievable. I think Chronic Hoosier referred to it as sorcery of some kind, which is about as good a description as I think I came up with. You had the women's team open up their season with a 23-point win over Butler on the road. Grace Berger in that game reached 1,000 points for her IU career, and Nicole Cardano-Hillary 7 of 8 from 3 for 29 points in total. So maybe Mike Woodson seeing if she's got some availability to step in and shoot for the guys. But no, just a great opening to a really highly anticipated season from the women's team. And then you had IU winning in the opener. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, as Ryan and I were not able to be on the postgame show, so we'll go over our thoughts. But while it wasn't as clean as we would have liked, and maybe gave us all some flashbacks to other games where IU let big leads slip away, the team did step up at the end of the game and picked up the win, and Mike Woodson is off to a 1-0 start. But I would be remiss on November 11th to not also include something about Veterans Day here. So, as a lot of different people on social media in different ways have, had thoughts on this. And it's one of those where, one day doesn't really feel like enough to honor people who have served the country, and those that, as well as those who continue to do so. So just on behalf of all of us, thanks to all of you brave and selfless men and women who have protected our freedom. And we are truly inspired by your courage and your sacrifice that you make and your families make right along with you. So thank you all for that on this Veterans Day. And with that, let me introduce my esteemed co-hosts for tonight. First up,
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's on Sony time.
all right, Coach. You took a little flack for the general tone of your comments the other night. So you're back with a couple days to marinate on the performance. So how you feeling tonight? Any different? Where are you at?
Well, I'm trying not to have that face that several people commented about, and I forced me to change my Twitter profile to the.
It's just my face, guys.
Yeah,
what's wrong?
exactly. It's Veterans Day, and Andy, thank you for doing that. And we have the freedom to agree and disagree. That's one of the most beautiful things that other people have done for me and sacrificed for me. So, yeah, there were a lot of good comments, a lot of good reasons why Indiana had a tight game in game one. And reasons happen all the time. And by no means is the foundation not there or the season in disrepair. So hopefully, my comments right off the bat, I'll point to the back end of the show where I said the foundation was well. Defense needs to be there when offense has an off night. So that was a good thing. I still struggled with the Indiana offense. I don't think it was very good, and I'm not going to change my opinion on that. It was shocking to me because I thought they played better in the Bahamas and they played better in the secret scrimmage, and I was expecting a little bit more. And so, that can change in one night. They can come out tomorrow and hit 50% from their threes, and it is a small sample size. And a lot of teams are struggling early in the season. I get all that. But I just thought this team would play better. Well, maybe the word not better is a little more consistent. They had really good runs, and then they had a dry spell in the first half for about 8 minutes and a dry spell for about 12 minutes in the second half. And I just didn't expect this team to have that kind of performance. And I'm sure they're not happy with it, too. Coach Woodson said the defense was better than the offense, and he knows what he's doing because I agree totally with him. This team is a lot more fun to watch. I think the foundation and the fundamentals of this program are a lot better than where we were last year. I just want to see the performance be a lot better and the expectations that Indiana, a blue blood team, should have won that game. If they had a bad game, should have won that game 14, 15 points and not have it down to 1 or 2 possessions there with 3 minutes to go. And I just believe that's true. I think it was a bad performance offensively. But there's a game tomorrow, and we're talking basketball, and we live in a great country, and those are things I try to remember regardless.
All right. And to my right?
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Ryan, what's your rant for the week since you didn't get to give one on the first postgame show of the season?
Just first of all, thank God we have actual basketball to talk about for the first time in months. It was nice to finally have a game. Watching the game, several things stood out to me. One is, and we'll talk about it coming up. They got to make shots, and there were a lot of open looks that they missed. Caveat for first game jitters. That happens a lot. You're looking across the country right now. A lot of teams are struggling against lower competition right now. I think that really you're not going to be able to judge this team fully until we get into Big Ten play and they get a couple games on their belt and all that stuff. So, but you get a win. It's the first one. Get it out of the way and move on to the next one and build on it. They're going to be able to watch film on all the things they did wrong and correct them, and that's a positive. I think that if you lose that game, you really, it's a huge blow to the ego, and you're really back to the drawing board. Whereas this, okay, we won it. Let's build on what we did well, as opposed to just having to throw everything out and start over. So I realize it's one game, but if you do lose that game to a team that's not supposed to be good at all, it could have been a disaster and set them back 5 games. So get through it. Everybody else is struggling. Like most other teams are struggling. Just get through it, build on it, start to make some shots, start to ease your way into it. Because there's certainly enough talent on this team. And you saw it in the first half of that game that there's enough talent on this team to be pretty darn good. And they just weren't showing it in the second half. I think there were a lot of just mental lapses and things like that. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but I think the big takeaway is they got to make shots, and we'll see if it, for a lot of them, was just first game jitters and finally getting to play somebody else that caused that. Oh, and also Andy's Veterans Day thing was great. One more thing to mention, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, but specifically my dad, who spent 24 years as a surgeon in the Navy, and that's I had to single him out for that.
I almost did, but I figured you would do that as well. So,
yeah.
So Chuck, this one's for you. All right. So coming up on Assembly Call Radio, we got in our first segment, we're going to talk Hoosier headlines, which is largely going to be digging a little bit more into the Eastern Michigan game, given a little bit of time to look at it and think back about it, reflect a little bit. Segment 2 will be our Jakai Newton scouting report from Ryan. So we got some questions lined up for him to walk through the scouting report on Jakai, who I know we've been talking about doing this for a couple weeks, so looking forward to that. And then in segment 3, as always, we got a ton of questions from you. I tried to pull the ones up about the Eastern Michigan game, so to kind of help guide our conversation on that. But then we've got some others just looking forward to the game on Friday against Northern Illinois and just some general personnel questions. So lots of good ones there. We'll try to get to those, as many of those as we can. But with that, this edition of Assembly Call Radio is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel. And in case you missed it, they just did a brand refresh for Indiana that includes 3 fantastic new designs: a shirt commemorating Key Smart's shot to win the 1987 championship, a new bison design from 1965, and an alternate version of the oval sandwiched between the words "never" and "daunted." Also came out with a new IU sticker this week as basketball tipped off. So each new design mentioned above deserves your attention and your dollars, and first-time customers can get 15% off with our promo code HOME. Yes, it's a different promo code now. It's HOME, HOME. We'll get you 15% off at checkout on Home Field Apparel on your first order. Wear one for the team. All right, guys. So wanted to talk a little bit more about the Eastern Michigan game. I guess I'll kind of start with my general thoughts, and then Ryan, feel free to, if you've got anything you didn't really touch on earlier. I think defensively felt good about a lot of things. You could tell that had been a focus. The level of switching and general communication was pretty good, as you could see. I know Coach Adranya did that in his film room. He had a couple segments just talking about the switching and some of those kinds of things. So I thought overall played well on that end of the floor. Even when Eastern Michigan got back in it, Farrakhan was hitting some really tough shots as he got rolling. And then, once he saw a couple go through the net after missing, I think the first 13, things kind of got away from him a little bit. But even then, a lot of the shots that they made during that run were not necessarily quality shots, I wouldn't say. But IU did relax a bit on that end. I felt like when they got up. I think the bigger issue and question mark is on the offensive end. I think the shooting percentage numbers are one thing, and we can touch on that a little bit. It looked to me like a team that was struggling a little bit to figure out what the right balance is between this newfound freedom they have to, take threes and play fast, versus the methodical pound the ball inside every time, run clock and whatever else. And I thought they just didn't strike a very good balance in that regard. So I think they took some quick shots in situations where you probably could have, worked the ball around a little bit, maybe got a better shot. I thought there were other times they ran offense and got wide open shots that they just missed. Now that probably is as concerning as anything, but again, to me, that goes back to the sample size piece. So I think it's certainly easy for anybody to point out that that's where the concerns lie. I struggle a little bit to figure out what if there's a fix for that, or if that's just over the course of time, they figure out how to balance that out. But I think that was the biggest takeaway for me was it looked like a team in transition of playing styles and struggling to really figure out what that is. I know we texted about this a little bit, and Coach, you had a comment on, some of the freedom and giving guys confidence to shoot and trying to strike the right balance between where to stop, where to try to rein that in. So, how do you approach that from a coaching standpoint for some of the guys who you might say took maybe too many liberties with the new free flowing offense, and there were times when things really got away from him. Those were the situations where they got away from Trace for too many possessions in a row.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing in basketball, or one of the hardest things in basketball, is to teach shot selection. I think it's vital because good shots lead to good results, and it also prevents breakouts. But also it can be overanalyzed by players, and then they start thinking. And we saw a lot of that last year, where the emphasis was get the ball to Trace Jackson Davis, and players who want to do well by the coach listen to the coach, and then they don't have that freedom to take shots. So a lot of times what you do is you give them freedom first and you try to rein them in. I think that's the easiest way, and that's what I think Coach Woodson is going to do. Is he really harped on that freedom to shoot. Now it's in on game film, and now he can go back and teach. But you're always a little concerned that it goes too much back the other way too, just because people are trying to be coached. And so shot selection is just really difficult concept in many ways. But the quick shots, I think, were an issue. And then that stretch of 12 minutes from 14:21 to 2:47, there were 21 possessions, and Trace Jackson Davis only had 3 outcomes. One was a free throw, one was a missed 2, and one was a 2. And it went from a 20-point lead down to a 2-point game in that stretch. That's something that the guys got to figure out, and they will. It's a long season. That sample size stuff is probably one of the better points that was thrown my way. But shot selection is very, very, very difficult. I just think it's better to start this way, But boy, if you miss shots and take bad shots, you can lose games that you shouldn't. And so that might just be something we have to go through as a program until we get mature enough, basketball mature enough to understand how this team's got to work.
Yeah, Ryan, just as you look back,
ahead.
I mean, any thoughts on that or other, general takeaways for you before we hit some of the listener questions about the game?
Sure, and look, that if this team shoots 30% from three in that game, it looks completely different. You know what I mean? And they shot 16.7%. And so, by the way, 12 of 20 from the free throw line. They got to be better there. And they have been better in scrimmages and in the Bahamas. They were better. Trace Jackson Davis went 3 of 7. He's got to be better. But again, first game, it's, a lot of adrenaline, guys not focused, maybe overshooting a little bit. Maybe, your jump is a little higher. And so that takes something off the arc of your shot. I will say, I think the most positive thing that we saw, I mean, Trace Jackson Davis, obviously phenomenal game. But the most positive thing we saw was Race Thompson dominated that game in 24 minutes and in only 24 minutes, and he had such a meaningful impact on that game in every aspect, whether it was running the floor, diving on the floor, defensively, grabbing rebounds, outlets, throwing alley-oops, whatever it was, posting up down low, getting a feed from TJD. He only scored 5 points and had an enormous impact on the game. I said earlier in the offseason, I kind of felt like he might be a Draymond Green type for this team that does all the dirty work and sets the tone, but maybe doesn't put up the numbers that you would expect from a star. I really feel like that was a game like that for him, where he's not the superstar, but he's the guy who sets the tone for everybody and, is always there on defense, is always getting a rebound, is always running the floor and doing things and putting pressure on the opponent. So that stood out. You guys know I've loved Race for a long time, but that was really, it felt like, okay, now he's really taking this responsibility to do this every game. The other thing is, I mean, you look at the numbers, the raw numbers. Miller Kopp, 0 of 3 from 3. Race Thompson, 0 of 4. Those guys need to shoot. I mean, they need to be able to make those shots. And so you don't want to say, well, you went 0 for 4 or 0 for 3, so you got to cut back on your shot. No, they need to keep shooting because they need to start hitting those. And so that's what I took away from is not that they need to shoot fewer threes. It's that they need to make more somehow and figured that out. But Geronimo, 0 of 2. We've seen him make those shots, in preseason and in the scrimmage and all of that. Tamar Bates, 0 of 2. We know he can hit a 3, so I do think Rob Finney, 1 of 5. We've seen him go on streaks where he hits a bunch of threes. So I do think there was some of that first game adrenaline jitters. The one thing that was surprising to me when I looked at this game afterwards was they only won by 6 against an opponent they were far better than. They only turned the ball over 8 times. So it was really a case of just not making shots. That's all it was. And that's something that has to develop. And look, Mike Woodson and his staff have made that a priority, have made shooting a priority. Unlike the previous staff, it feels like they have made shooting a priority. And so I have confidence that that'll get fixed, but it needs to get fixed. I mean, so that was my those are my big takeaways.
All right, so question from Phil that I thought was a good one. So he said, obviously we have some kinks to work out based on the second half of the game on Tuesday. What are the top 3 positive takeaways that you have from Tuesday night's game? Coach, I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I think I kind of answered some of that in the community too. I really liked our defense. Our defense won the game. And in fact, if our offense was just a little bit better, this game is 20, 25 points based on our defense. That's despite the young man getting really hot. So I liked what I saw on defense, the hustle. The other thing I answered was Trace Jackson Davis is just incredible. He went to his right. He hit a jump shot. You could tell he really worked on his game. I think that's a positive because people are going to have to stop him. And then that's going to keep opening up shots that we need to hit, but it's going to make things easier down the road. I think that's positive. And Ryan talked about Race. What a just an enjoyable game to watch of his performance. And I really like Coach Woodson. In the second half, I said this after the game, he knew that shots were getting a little loose and getting a little crazy, and he went to a couple sets, a high-low game with the double post to emphasize getting the ball inside, and then he ran some flex, which is, you get an open 3 off of a sit-down on the down screen, and your big can down screen and post. And so that was impressive. I think his adjustments on the fly in the second half, he analyzed what was needed and tried to do it. And again, games happen where you don't shoot. So, it just was a bad shooting night overall, or it would have been a lot different. The scoring droughts worry me a little bit, but there were some positives there. But Indiana, being what we want it to be, can't beat Eastern Michigan by 6. That just can't be acceptable. Glad we did it, but it just can't be acceptable.
As I said earlier, I think you really can't tell with a college basketball team what you've got until maybe the first week of January. I mean, there are teams that go out and win the Maui Invitational and stink all year, or win, play great early in the season and just fall apart, or are terrible, put it together and figure it out and readjust and wind up going to the Final Four. I mean, you look at the last Big Ten championship Indiana team was awful, and they got blown out at Duke and then wound up, winning the Big Ten championship. So I think that you really have to wait and see for what you've got. And these next few months are really just getting ready for the season. I mean, it's the regular season, but you're getting ready for what's going to be the push. I mean, nobody goes undefeated in college basketball anymore. There's a reason, because it's a long season and you've got to figure things out and put things together.
Yeah, I think for me, you guys mentioned a lot of these, so I probably won't give 3. The turnover one I thought was, I guess I will give 3. The defense that coach mentioned, I thought they did a lot of good things there. It's still a couple communication things as they're switching and doing some, switching basically 1 through 4, but there was a few times communication, they lost guys, but generally speaking, they were in the right spots, had good help, were active, forced a lot of turnovers. I think that was a definitive improvement, and took good care of the basketball, as Ryan mentioned. I mean, 8 turnovers in a game that had, I think, mid-70s possession-wise, based on the way that I charted it. That's pretty good. You're going to feel good about that. And, I think the offense showed some good things in terms of being able to get what felt like quality shots. So this is, I don't know, maybe somewhat of a backhanded compliment, but I thought they got good shots when they ran some of the sets. And again, I thought Tony did a good job breaking some of that down in his film room where they were able to get shots. They just have to make some of these shots. There's definitely shot selection challenges, but I thought what they ran gave opportunities for it. It's just a matter, again, of trying to figure out what that balance is. The other thing that I was going to mention that totally escaped me as I was getting ready to start there was they did execute fairly well down the stretch. They had a real lull where they struggled to score, struggled to get the ball inside. I think that coincides with around the spot that coach is mentioning where they ran those couple of plays, got it into TJD. He was able to make a nice wraparound pass to Race for a basket. I think made another pass to Race where he got fouled. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they scored on, they went 1 or 2 from the line, maybe a few too many times, but 7 or 8 possessions, I felt like down the stretch when they really needed a basket, they were able to get one and execute well enough to get one. The problem was they, let Eastern Michigan get a little hot in stretches there, and just, felt like they could kind of turn on what they wanted to do offensively late. But I did think the late game execution was good when they needed to keep scoring until Farrakhan cooled off a little bit. I thought they did a reasonably good job of that for a team that has struggled to hold on to a lot of these leads and has struggled to execute down the stretch and at other times. So I don't have in front of me when I charted the possession, so I apologize for that. But I think they scored on a lot in a row down the stretch when they needed.
And what that tells me, Andy, is that when they're focused, it's fine, and that they probably got a big lead and just lost a little bit of focus, which just is immaturity. I mean, and that happens. And we've seen it happen to other teams or whatever. And it's not a good thing, but if they learn the lesson there that you're up 20, you can't just like let off the gas, and just cruise to a win. Then they'll learn that lesson. Especially, here's the thing. If you have a robust second unit with veterans on it, I think that's fine, but you've got guys all in a new system. Everybody's a freshman in the system. So it's hard to just, take your starters out and let the guys go into cruise control on the second unit there, because they're new in this too. So if you've got veteran depth, I think you can relax a little bit maybe, but clearly they weren't in a position to do that, only up 20. So I look, I think they got a lead and felt good about themselves and just kind of chilled. And Eastern Michigan did not quit the game and started making a lot of shots, and that's what changed the game.
All right, Ryan. So I'm going to combine these other couple questions because I think they're related. So the first question is, do you think the fan base overreacted to Tuesday's game?
Yes.
And the other is, as you get, that's maybe it's too easy one. The other one is from Steven. It says, as you get distance from the game and maybe even rewatched it, what has changed from the observations that you may have had in the moment, which I think speaks to the potential overreaction where everybody has that freak out moment when the game's getting away from them a little bit and maybe stepping back, see something that you didn't see in the moment.
Well, for me, the offense was better than I thought it was, even during the lulls. I think they were just shooting too quickly and not working it around and getting a better shot. But it wasn't the offense's fault. I think the players were just pulling the trigger kind of quickly. Again, you get up 20, you get a little shot happy. You're looking to make a big play as opposed to making the solid, smart play, making the extra pass, getting the ball inside. You're just looking to find something and do something spectacular. But I would say that was my biggest reaction. I think the offense was actually better on rewatch than it was watching it when I watched the first time. And of course, the fan base overreacted to the game, and it's what Indiana fans do. We overreact to good stuff and bad stuff. I remember last year when Indiana went in and beat Iowa on the road. Everyone's like, "We're turning this season around." And it's like, no, Iowa just really didn't play well in this one. But I think that yes, certainly there was overreaction. And like I said, guys, they're probably going to lose games early in the season, as again, new coaching staff, a lot of new players, all trying to figure out how to play together in this system. It's going to be up and down early on. The key is to build to January 1st and be able to have a team that can compete in the Big Ten. So if losses help them learn those things, that'll happen. That's not a bad thing if you can learn from those defeats and move forward and figure out what works and what doesn't. But yeah, I mean, I would not overreact to anything until we're in Big Ten play and not make any definitive statements about the team or the program or the coaching or anything until we're at the start of 2022.
Coach, what about you?
Yeah, the overreaction is to say that this season's already over with and all that kind of stuff that I saw in some places. Maybe I even overreacted. I still think it was a bad basketball game. If Indiana is Indiana, you don't win by 6, and my expectations are high, and I don't apologize for that. I thought there was a lot of dribbling, a lot of standing. The cuts weren't as sharp. From what I had seen and heard from the summer, the 3 exhibitions, they were a lot better offensively. So that was disappointing. I don't think that's an overreaction. You want Indiana to play well every game, and we should want Indiana to play well every game. They didn't play well in my view. What changed a little bit was it is 100% shot selection and making shots. That's what maybe changed for me. And going back and looking at the stats, the 2 droughts up 10-0, and then you lose a segment of play in the first half, I think by 8. You got to 12-10, or you lost it 10-2. And in the second half, you lost 3 segments to Eastern Michigan, 5, 3, and 7, and got outscored 27-12. That's not good basketball. And that's just honest. It doesn't mean I don't like Coach Woodson. I think we're doing great. I think he's doing a great thing. I think this group has some ability to go. So overreacting to think that this tells the story down the road, but I don't think I overreacted in saying, it wasn't the outcome that I expected. And if we only win by 4 or 5 on Friday, that's not good, despite them beating Washington. You got to set your expectations. You got to play for perfection. You got to coach for perfection, knowing that you're not going to, knowing that the early season is a difficult time, and then you learn and you keep moving forward.
Coach, I feel like you felt like that question was directed only at you when.
Oh, I got a lot, but. I'm the dumbest guy in the gym. I've been the dumbest guy in the gym for years. That's what they call the coach. The coach is the dumbest guy. Just go and listen to any crowd. Sit this guy.
Look, Coach, I wasn't going to say it, okay? I wasn't going to say it. I just want you to know that. That was not what I was
I've been called a lot worse and suggested to do things with my offense that are inhumane out loud, And I keep telling Mrs. Tonsoni that's not nice to yell at her husband. So No,
she's just
it's
into
all
it.
good.
She's just passionate. What are you going to do?
She's just passionate about the boys.
Absolutely.
So
All right. Well, we'll try to
good.
hit these. We'll try to hit these next couple quickly as we get close to the longest first segment ever. So Jalen Hood-Schifino, Caleb Banks, CJ Gunn all signed their national letters of intent. The 2022 class is currently third in the Big Ten and 16th overall, according to 24/7. And then IU Northern Illinois is on Friday at 7. That is a BTN Plus game. I think it was Valerie who wanted to make sure that we reminded everybody of that. So if you need to get your monthly subscription to watch that game, I also believe that I heard today they're going to sync Don Fisher and Eric Sir's audio with the broadcast on BTN Plus. I believe I saw that somewhere today, which hopefully I'm somebody in the chat. I'm sure will point out if that is inaccurate. So no promises there. Northern Illinois picked to finish toward the bottom of the MAC with Eastern Michigan, as I think we talked about in the offseason. They did upset Washington in their first game, 71-64. They made 12 of 23 from 3-point range. I do not know a great deal about Northern Illinois. What I will say is this: Washington has I forget the guy's name, but the former assistant at Syracuse for a long time. So they do play a lot of zone. Hopkins, thank you, who is firmly on the hot seat even before losing this game. They play a lot of zone. You got a first-year coach for Northern Illinois. So I struggle to really know whether the 23 threes are a function of the way that they want to play offense or of what the defense gave them. But they took 25 two-point shots and 23 three-point shots. But I suppose when you make 12 of the 23, you're in pretty good shape because they did not make a very high percentage from 2-point range. Best player, at least in that game, was Trendon Hankerson. He was 6 of 11 from 3, had 28 points. He's a senior. Looking back at his stats from a shooting perspective, shot it really well, almost 45% from 3. As a sophomore, regressed to about 37%, which most IU fans would probably kill for, even though I just called that regression as a junior, and obviously shot it really well the other night. So I think that's going to be a key assignment, whether that's Finney getting it at some point when he's in the game. I would imagine that to be the case. That's kind of the guy that IU is going to want to and need to slow down a bit. Again, I don't know what to read into that. Washington did get to the free throw line 36 times, so they got fouled a ton. They shot a poor percentage from the line. They made just 21 of those 36, so that doesn't help. They shot 3 of 18 from 3. Again, without watching the game, hard to attribute that to defense or just generally poor shooting, although one guy went 9 of 22 on twos, I believe, for Washington, who's been I think Washington might be his third school at this point. But Washington did have 27 offensive rebounds. IU didn't have a lot. We actually have a question later about IU's philosophy on offensive rebounding. So again, going back to the sample size thing, I don't know that we take that to mean Northern Illinois is anything special. But at the very least, probably helps Coach Woodson get the attention of the team. I think there was a question from Kathy. I'll just kind of throw this in here now. Coach, I'll throw this one to you first. If there's one thing that you want to see improve in the game tomorrow night, what is it?
Something I call one more passing. Hit the open guy. And we talk a lot about in some coaches' circles, you need to hit singles and doubles. You don't have to hit home runs. And part of the problem maybe on the first night was everyone wants Indiana to do well. They came here, they transferred here, they want to play for Coach Woodson, and that might have led to some problems. But for me, it's one more. Drive in, look for the kick. If someone closes out, throw that next one, and find the open three-point shooter, regardless who it is, and then keep shooting. Ryan said it. You got to shoot in order to make them, in order to stretch the floor. But the passing, to me, is a way to make that maybe a little bit better.
Ryan, what about you? What's the one thing you're looking for tomorrow?
Hit some shots, please. It's the shooting. I mean, it's been the shooting for 5 years. Let's hit some shots. Let's step into some open looks and knock them down. Hit them like you hit them in practice. I'm looking for guys to calm down a little too. I think that first game, adrenaline, jitters, that's going to be out of the way. I think it'll be a more level-headed game and a more focused game. And again, typical. First game of the season is always a crapshoot, and you're seeing it. Ranked teams are losing to mid-majors all across the country. It's happening. And you're seeing Power 5 teams lose to mid-majors all across the country. So Virginia lost to Navy.
It's no coincidence that Jared's not on after that Virginia performance.
He couldn't show his face. So yeah, I do expect a better performance, and that's why the first performance. I know coaches it really thinks it was bad basketball. It was bad basketball. It was a bad basketball game, but I do think that there is something to that opening game, opening night, first time in front of the big crowd, adrenaline, whatever. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, but I do think that you'll see a better basketball game, and I think you see some guys hit some shots too.
Yeah, I think the shooting to me is the obvious one. The other thing I'll throw out just to go with something different is a little bit more of that killer instinct, whatever you want to say. If they're able to get a lead, do they take a breath and relax a little bit, or do they, keep the pedal down as they go? So that's really what I'm looking for. Do they learn those lessons and come with more consistent effort? So, all right. Well, with that, we will finally take a break here after segment one, and when we come back, we're gonna get into Ryan's long-awaited scouting report on IU's latest commitment, Jakai Newton. People are definitely excited about his potential, so stick with us here next to find out why. All right, welcome everybody. Just a shade over a half hour in the first segment, but it's like a bonus post-game show when Ryan can be on. But all four of us will be on tomorrow night on Coach's birthday, no less, to hopefully celebrate an IU victory.
Quad box tomorrow night. Quad box. I watch too much NFL Red Zone. It's
yeah, you might, yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fun. All four of us finally. First foursome of the year.
All right.
No birthday plans, huh, Coach?
No, I'd rather spend it with you. I'm sending Amy to the school play.
What's the play this year?
Diary of a Wallflower.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard about that? I don't.
I think it was a movie that
Okay.
I mean, it might be a play first. I don't know, but I think it was a movie.
So she asked. I said, "Listen, I'm gonna watch a game 7 to 9 regardless, and then I'm on the show till 10:30. So dinner and cake before the game, and when you're married 29 years, this is probably a good solution on my birthday."
Give me 1 second. We'll be right back when we can start the next segment.
All right, sounds good.
Early on, you get all kinds of nice stuff and go out to dinner and get dressed up. Now, when you're old, happy birthday, old man, and I'm going to the play.
Perfect.
How's your coaching going, man? You're getting right into the heat of the action here with basketball.
We have we got like a preseason. I don't know. They're kind of like running clock games, but it's just, glorified scrimmages. But the league always does it to get started. So we'll see how it goes. I got the same 8 that I had last year, although one of them's got a broken wrist at the moment. So we're a little light in the backcourt, but we'll see how it goes. They're good kids. So looking forward to watching them get to play a little bit and, be out there instead of practicing and us giving them a hard time. So.
Here's a great story about busting Joel, because whenever I can bust Joel, I want to bust Joel. Joel wanted my parking passes, and he decided to do that on Monday or Tuesday night, and there wasn't enough time to get him in the mail or whatever. So he decides to drive up. He does all that driving stuff anyway for his clients. He drives up to our school. So first of all, I had to tell the secretary, hey, this big dude with long hair is coming in to get parking passes. Don't call the police, because it's a threat. It's a threat at the school. So Joe walks in, and I bring him to my classroom, introduce him to my 7th period class. He has a good conversation, show him how we do bracketology with all the signs and stuff. And then I kick him out because I got to finish up class. And he goes down to the library, and he cooks with Amy during tailgates. And all of a sudden, the intercom comes on. Whoever is driving a white vehicle, blah, 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 blah. You're parked in the bus lane. And I just busted out laughing. So Joel
you knew
makes
exactly who it was.
I knew exactly who it was. It was Joel. One time he visits Delphi High School. He comes in and he has to be kicked out of the school via the intercom for parking illegally in front of the bus lane. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Perfect.
It's perfect. Couldn't draw it up any better.
Absolutely. Awesome.
That and the other thing,
go ahead.
Community. Join the community. If you're not part of the community, you're hearing on podcasts or whatever, join the community. Glenn from the community spent 30 minutes on me. I'm trying to hardwire this computer when I host, so we don't have that issue of the sound. and he worked through some things, helped me order and find some things that I need to order. And it's just Hoosiers helping Hoosiers, regardless of wins and losses. So Glenn, if you're listening, thank you. I know I tried to thank you in the community, but man, what a neat thing that we have going on there. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of good basketball content as well. I know Jared posted something on using the shot quality site, which actually felt fairly favorable about the shots that IU was able to get. Obviously, we have discussed how we felt about the actual results of said shots, but it was some good analysis, different ways to look at things, and a lot of good conversation. So
good shots,
certainly
just gotta make them.
Certainly appreciate that. All right, you fellas ready? Ryan, you ready?
Let's do it.
Little Jakai Newton. All right, here we go.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call. So how do you keep up with the fire hose of information that comes out almost every day about IU basketball? It's crazy during the offseason and even crazier now that the season has started. Well, we've got your back. We send out a free weekly email newsletter on Sunday mornings. It rounds up the most important and interesting IU basketball stories from the previous week to keep you up to date on your Hoosiers. Over 9,000 of your fellow IU fans are on the list already, and we want you to be on there as well. So go to join.assemblycall.com to subscribe for free now. Again, that's join.assemblycall.com. So I put shooters in the intros tonight, just hoping that osmosis will sink in and it will help the performance tomorrow night. So we'll see. So we got holes with that one. Another good shooter coming up for the next one. So hopefully that'll rub off a little bit. So, all right. Well, we wanted to been wanting to do this for a couple of weeks, but ended up having want to do some of the over-unders and talk with Scott and Galen last week. So we'll get Ryan's scouting report on Jakai Newton now, kind of an in-between game look ahead to Newton. So Ryan, just as we get started, the easiest thing to do is probably start with some strengths and weaknesses. So what, as you have evaluated him, what really stands out as 2-3 things that he really does well, and maybe a thing or two that are opportunities for him as he moves through his high school season, and the AAU season heading into his time at IU.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Jakai Newton listed as a combo guard, probably more of a shooting guard, and given his size and length, he's 6'3", 6'4", with a wingspan that is about 6'10", 6'11". So he could probably play 1 through 3, quite frankly, and is probably a guy, given his ball handling, which is a strength, and it's weird. He's a hyper athletic, crazy athletic guy. His vertical is 40 plus that length. And so what I would say about him, that the first strength is just his raw talent and physical ability is the first strength. The second strength is usually with guys who are that athletic, the basketball stuff lags behind because they can get away with making mistakes from a basketball sense because of their athleticism. They don't have to have great technique going to the hoop. They can just jump over everybody. He's so quick that he doesn't need to have great ball handling skills because he's by somebody. He won't need to worry about a steal, especially when you're playing in Covington, Georgia, instead of playing in Indianapolis. Not that that's a bad area for basketball, but the competition isn't what it is in some other areas. What I would say about his ball handling is I was pleasantly surprised. He goes right and left the same. He actually loves to, he's right-handed. He loves to drive with his left and finish on that side of the floor, and can finish with both hands. So really impressed with that. Was not expecting to be impressed with that because typically super athletic guys, again, the basketball stuff lags behind. Not with him. And I think another strength from his is he's a committed defender. He really wants to engage defensively. And again, another surprise. Athletic guys, a lot of times they're looking for a block, looking for a steal, looking to, make the flashy play. He actually wants to prevent guys from driving and moves really well laterally. And that was another a huge strength of his. Lateral quickness defensively is a huge strength. As far as weaknesses go, there's one glaring one, and it's his shot. And here's the thing, though. I think it's getting better. The other day we saw some footage from a high school game from his, and it looks much better. It is much cleaner. It is, he's following through more. You look at the tape from maybe over the summer, and he's certainly got an ability to develop a jump shot. It's a smooth motion. He finishes well, but his feet are not angled at the basket. And that is, again, a small change you can make, and all of a sudden he's hitting shots. So the actual mechanism of his shot is fine. And it's a good finish, a good high finish. It's smooth. It's one motion as opposed to, catch and jerk and then shoot or something like that. No, he's got a very smooth jumper. It's just a matter of getting those feet aligned, getting it consistently, getting it up there. And I don't think it's a huge hurdle to climb for him. I would say he also sometimes needs to be aware, maybe be a better passer. Right now, he sort of is he's a guy who I watched a couple full games, and when he doesn't have an opportunity to drive, that's what he wants to do. He wants to get the ball and he wants to go to the hoop. And when he doesn't have that opportunity, he just kind of moves the ball along. He doesn't create for anybody else. If you're a guard on a wing, you got to be able to maybe drive in and look for somebody else instead of always be forcing it yourself. But again, you're the best player on your high school team. You're the best player on your AAU team. You're going to be attacking the rim and looking to score because that burden's on you. He's got to learn to play within a team concept a little bit there. But again, not something that's a big red flag for a high schooler. This kid's not even going to be on campus till 2023. So he's got time to develop. I think that, it'll seem really quick until he's here, but he's got a long length of time to develop. He's got a whole other AAU season ahead of him. He's got two whole high school seasons ahead of him. So there will be development there. There's a lot to like here and a very, very high ceiling, given his athleticism and given, the basketball sense he already has.
Where do you see his progression as far as freshman year, sophomore year? How does that play out according to what you see from him already?
I could see him being maybe a sixth man as a freshman. I mean, again, Coach, as I said, we got a lot of development left. So this is just where I'm projecting now. I could see him being a sixth, seventh man as a freshman and then starting as a sophomore if he continues on this development trajectory. The reason why I see sixth and seventh man as a freshman is because you can't keep somebody that athletic who can defend off the court, because sometimes you just got to let guys go wild on offense. And he's just a guy who, they'll be throwing a lot of backdoor alley-oops to him, things like that. And he could probably do that as a freshman. He can probably have some straight line drives as a freshman to the basket, get to the hoop, maybe get fouled. Again, those percentages from three and from the free throw line need to tick up, but to be a dangerous driver, because as you know, if you can't shoot threes, they'll just hang off of you, and because they know how they get the scouting reports too. They know how athletic you are. They're not going to just give you driving lanes. So, I think that's come in, be an athletic presence, attack the rim, play some defense. This guy, he can grab rebounds too. With that length, if he'd be a great guard rebounder too. So I think I see that. And then maybe if he continues to progress as a sophomore, he's starting and being able to provide that athleticism in the, on the wing as a freshman.
Does he have closer material? That's one of the concerns coming out of game one. I think Tamar definitely does when he gets going here in the second half. We want Rob and we want X to be that for us this year. We hope that they develop into that. When things aren't there, go make a tough shot, go make a bad shot, go make a shot in the lane. Does he have that kind of capability at some point early in his career?
I think the fact that he's been the lead guy on his teams will help that. Will lend to that. And but as I said, you've got to be able to consistently hit that shot to be that guy, I think, because again, if all you're doing is driving and pulling up or driving and getting into the lane and trying to finish, and you're not able to knock down that long distance jumper, it's going to be really hard to be a closer, because you got to you saw the ultimate closer in college basketball last year was I would assume. And the reason why is because he could hit a shot from anywhere. And that's what makes him the most dangerous player. It made him the most dangerous player late in the game. So Newton's got to be able to prove that he can get that shot. Now, as I've said, I think he can develop that. I really do. The motion is not bad. The question is just the footwork and being able to, get his balance right, get all of that stuff right, which again, very fixable if you have the right people teaching you. And so, I think that he could develop into that. there's an Oladipo like. I mean, I'm not comparing to Victor Oladipo, so stop that. I know you're thinking it. Stop that. But there's an Oladipo like quality to him in that he's coming out of high school and that he's very athletic, is willing to play defense, has some length, all of that stuff. It's a matter of how hard you work and how you develop. And Oladipo went from being just an athletic guy to being a star. And so a lot of this is going to be on Newton and working hard. Now, this is a kid with a 3.5 GPA who volunteers for local, charities, who is, seems to be a great kid. And so those kids, it's a lot easier to motivate those kids to work really hard if they're already working hard, in other aspects and not just relying on their athleticism. So I think he's a guy who's really worth watching over the next year. Hoosier fans, tune in, see how he's doing in high school basketball. Next summer, find all the AAU clips you can find and watch that progression. Compare them to where he's at this year and watch that progression, because I think he is definitely a candidate to jump up big time with his overall talent and ability.
So as we think role, I know you mentioned he's labeled more as a combo guard. Based on your description, sounds like that leans a lot more to the 2 than the 1. How do you think that fits in with the other guys that IU has coming in next year, and then kind of thinking another year ahead to when he's here? Like, how much do you think that dictates what role he ends up playing for IU, or is that really a skill set thing that determines that ultimately?
It'll probably be a skill set thing. And here's the thing is that it's a very guard centric game now. So you could have 3 point guards or 3 guys who can handle the ball on the floor at the same time. And the world's changing in that way. I could definitely see Jalen Hood-Schifino, Tamar Bates, and Jakai Newton on the floor at the same time, and probably slide Newton over to the 3, maybe, because he can defend a 3 given his length, sort of like that, and do a 3-guard attack if all 3 of those guys are still here at that point. I also could see him being sort of a second unit ball handler, bringing the ball up. He has enough ball handling ability. Now, I don't want him creating for people, but I think that he could, in a pinch, be the guy who brings the ball up the floor and not give you a heart attack. I think he's a very skilled dribbler, and it's impressive. But, a guy like Hood-Schifino and he would play very well off of each other because of the differences in athleticism, the differences in length, and the differences in their overall ability. I think they could really pair well. Tamar Bates is still around. Another guy pairs very well with those two. So looking ahead, yes, I think that he really works with what they're bringing in. Athletic, can score, plays defense, has some length. You can tell the guys that Mike Woodson really likes. He wants athletic guys with length, NBA style guys who can play some defense and can attack on the offensive end. And you gotta develop those guys into shooters too. And obviously, if you're looking at some of the other targets they're targeting, they're trying to get shooters as well. So like a Gabe Cups or guys like that, they're really trying to balance these pickups up with some shooting and some solid stuff, some solid all around players. But Jakai Newton's just a very high ceiling guy, just an incredibly high ceiling to what he can become. Does he reach it? That's on him. But it certainly exists. And you look at this guy and you watch his film, just jumps off the page how athletic he is and how he loves to attack. One of the things that's interesting about him is when he jumps to finish, he jumps off 2 feet almost every time. Now that can get awkward in the lane if you're trying to finish with a layup, but it's also a much more explosive way to jump when you are trying to throw down dunks. And he throws down some monster dunks and is a guy who wants to finish emphatically. And you kind of need guys with that mindset on your team. You really do. And Indiana hasn't had that for a while other than Trace Jackson Davis.
And would you agree with this, Ryan, too? Everyone who commits to a school really wants to go to that school, but I feel Newton really likes IU. I think his family really likes IU, which means there's going to be a lot of effort to get better and do what needs to be done. There's no, I'm encouraged by what you've heard from his family and I know that's not a basketball skill necessarily, but it is a skill if you're really bought in. And I think that the name on the front of the jersey is going to be just as important to him as anything on the back. That you get that feel. Is that a true reading, or am I just kind of hopeful?
Absolutely, it's a true reading, and look, he committed to Indiana before his junior season of basketball even started. He didn't go through the entire process. He went to Indiana, visited it, had a long-time relationship with Roseman and with Hoosier Roseman, and just decided that's where he wants to go. And you know what? Guys who are bought in like that, they get what's coming and they understand it and they want to be a part of it. And so very encouraging for Indiana that this kid jumped on this. And like you said, he's a 4-star, 67th ranked player in the country with a lot of helium and could jump up even higher. And he's saying, that's where I'm going. And so also funny quirk about Jakai Newton, goes to Newton High School. They named the place after him. But it's so yeah, very encouraging that he wanted to go there early and commit early and be locked in. And guys who do that, sometimes they change their mind, but I don't get that feeling here. I think he's locked in and that's what he wants to do.
So we'll kind of wrap up with this. Well, I guess I'll combine a couple questions. One from the great Bob Thompson, who does the music for the show. He wants a player comp, as everyone always does with these, because we know how much you love them. But while you're thinking about that, you can answer the other question that I had, which was, what skill or couple skills really translate the most to an impact that he can make in his freshman year, understanding that could change over the remainder of his high school career. But, what are one or two things he does now that you think translate right away?
Well, I think just the athleticism is going to translate immediately. He'll be one of the more athletically gifted players in the Big Ten when he steps on the floor. I mean, having a 6'11" wingspan, being 6'3", 6'4", and being able to jump out of the gym, all of that will translate immediately. And so that's the first thing. But I think as far as skills go, I think just quickness off the bounce. He's very, very quick and doesn't hesitate when he sees a lane to drive. And I think the defensive, his ability to move laterally and play defense will translate, and it is something he'll carry to. If he doesn't develop any better at all, those things that he has right now play in college basketball. The fact that he moves laterally, cuts guys off, wants to be all over them defensively, not let them shoot, using that length to prevent guys from shooting or getting layups. I think all of that translates immediately. The other stuff, the basketball skill stuff, the shooting, his ball handling is great, but of course it can get better. All of that can continue to develop and get better. But right now, that athleticism, I mean, he's a guy who could just run the baseline. He could throw out alley-oops to all day. Cut back door, whatever, get him the ball. He's going to dunk. Get him out on the break, throw him a pass from half court, let him run, dunk. That stuff translates now. The question is just, how does he develop those basketball skills? How much work does he put into straightening out that jumper? And somebody asked in the chat, how off are his feet? And they're shifted away. I mean, his his left foot's behind his right foot, and his body is shifted a little bit. Now, there are guys who can have that kind of positioning and make shots. They're rarer, and it's also it's easier to, what I'm saying is, I'm trying to think out how to word this, but when the mechanics are off, it's harder to fix the shot. And it's harder to work through problems. And when you go into a slump, it's harder to fix that. So that's why you want guys to have the perfect mechanics. Not everyone's going to have perfect mechanics. A perfect example of a guy who did not have good mechanics and was an amazing shooter, Jordan Hulse. Whatever he did worked for his body and worked for him. Somebody mentioned Steph Curry. His feet aren't square. He's Steph Curry. He's on another level. But when you're only hitting 20% of your 3-point shots and your mechanics are off, there's an easy fix there, and that's to fix the mechanics. And that typically leads to success. So that's what he has to work on. And if he starts making threes with those mechanics, fine, leave him alone. But if you want an easy fix, it's to square your body, square your shoulders, and face the basket.
All right. Well, that'll do it for our Jakai Newton roundup. Thank you, Ron, as always. When we come back, we're going to answer your questions, as we always do in our third segment. So stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, he's he's on a pretty steep trajectory already, just in terms of how much he's risen so far. So if he
oh my gosh,
keep that up.
And
I mean, over
you understand why you
couple
watched like,
more seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched his high school highlights from last year, and he's an explosive athlete, explosive guy, had some ball handling. You watch him in AAU this summer, he's much smoother and much better, and you understand why he jumped up. So, yeah, and for people, there are people in the chat talking about shots, and some guys' shots are flat, but they win it, whatever. There are guys who could shoot it, however they want and make it, and they're anomalies in general. They're anomalies, but when you're not a pure shooter and can't make it all the time, that's when you go back to the mechanical fixes. And if and I think he hit something like 70% of his free throws last year, or on the circuit this summer. I guess it was this summer, and hit about 20% from three, shooting it a lot. That means, okay, something's off here. Let's try and adjust something. I remember between my junior and senior year, when I would shoot, I'm right-handed, so I would twist. It was like I was pushing more from my right side, and I would twist as I shot. And I had a basketball coach, a personal basketball coach, and he was just like, you'll shoot 20% better if you just jump the same with both feet instead of jumping more with your right foot than your left foot. You jump with both feet, you keep your shoulders square to the basket, you keep your body square to the basket, and it's much easier. And by the way, it feels when you have your whole body moving towards the hoop instead of twisting like that, the ball feels a lot lighter when you shoot it because your whole body is behind the shot. And so little changes like that can change you as a shooter. He was right. My shooting percentage went up by 20 points. Like it was, it's a very...
You probably kept the ball more straight.
Yes.
You had a tendency to go left or right based on your turn. I'm a big keep the ball straight guy.
No, you're absolutely right. Especially from places like the top of the key. Where being straight very much matters. You're on the baseline, you can twist it a little bit. From the side, you can twist it a little bit and still make it. From the top of the key, you got to be straight on to make that shot. You're not going to get much help from the rim. And so he was absolutely right that I was drifting my body to the side. And that when you release it, unless you release it absolutely at the perfect millisecond,
right,
it will twist and it will spin as you go. And you shoot 1,000 shots, how many are going to be 100% perfect? There'll be a percentage, but it's not going to be all of them. And if you're square, there's a higher chance that you're going to release perfect shots every time. So again, some guys are super athletic and can do, are just special. And no matter what they do, their shot's going to go in. Steph Curry is one of those guys. He takes some shots that are ugly as sin, but they go in because he's Steph Curry. But if you notice, a perfect example is a guy like Kobe Bryant. When he would shoot a fadeaway, like a back to the basket, turn around, 180 and shoot it. He looked at the mechanics of that, you'd be like, well, that's a bad shot. But in the air, if you paused it at the moment he released the ball, his shoulders were square to the basket. He would hold the ball until he was square and then release it. His whole body would be facing it. And then as he released it, his body would twist afterwards, because he'd be flipping around. But he would always get his shoulders and his arms square to the basket, release the ball. And there's a reason why a guy who practiced as maniacally as Kobe did knew to do that. Because if he did it any other way, the chances he missed that shot would be much higher. And so when you go back and you watch, just type in on YouTube, like, Kobe Bryant fadeaways. Every time that he makes one purely, there are ones where he's a little bit off and it'll rattle the rim. But when you see swishes, every time you can slow that video down. And when he releases it, his shoulders and body are square. Despite moving through the air or shifting, you stop it at the moment of the release, he is square to the basket. That's what you need to do as a shooter. You need to get yourself in the best position to shoot. And so when guys have bad mechanics, they're not putting themselves in the most advantageous position. Again, Jordan Hulls, his shot was weird. It was down by his shoulder. It was whatever. He had probably practiced that so much that he figured out a way to make it perfect and make it so it worked for him. He had, that's a kid who grew up with a basketball in his crib probably. And so he figured out a way to make that work for him. And other guys do that too. But then, if they become pure shooters from a young age, if you're not that, again, rely on the mechanics. The mechanics will not fail you if you do them right. So that's why we always harp on mechanical stuff. That's why we always harp on footwork and all those things. And it leads to success. It will lead to success if you do it mechanically correct. Now, again, not everybody needs to do that. But with guys who are struggling, boom, mechanically, rely on those mechanics, and that's how you will be successful.
That was just a doctorate in shot doctor
There you go.
right there.
You should just
PhD.
isolate that, post it
Yes.
somewhere.
This concludes our TED Talk on
There you go.
on shooting.
As if we needed more like chewing up more time in this show.
Just in case. Just in case. All right, let's get into the question. I tried to group them a little bit, so we'll do as many as we can. But I'll probably try to wrap up by 10:30 at the latest, just so we're not going forever. So we'll be back at it again tomorrow night. So, all right, here we go.
This is Nick Zeisloft. I never miss an open three, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
And welcome back. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. And as we always do in our third segment, it's time for our mailbag. All questions, as usual, submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join at assemblycall.com/community. Our mediocre question this week from Jay is, are any other IU fans planning to be at the Carrier Dome at the end of the month? He and his wife just booked their flights. He was texting us about this today, then proceeded to tell us what his track record was at attending road IU games. So definitely sounds like we need some of you with some positive vibes and hopefully positive history of traveling with the team to accompany them there to offset what appears to be the curse of Jay in this scenario. So should be a good game for sure. It did lead us to get a few good Jim Boeheim gifts in our text chain, so that was useful. But if anybody's out there, I'm sure Jay will be looking to meet up, and certainly anybody who lives out that way, that would be good as well. I would like IU to win because I have neighbors who are huge Syracuse fans, and so at least some bragging rights a little bit here if possible. But all right, we'll get into our other questions. A couple personnel related ones. I kind of grouped these together. I believe this one was from Coach Marlowe, who brought it up on the postgame show. Do you think we'll see more of Trey Galloway as more of a point forward? Coach, I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I do. And I know that he's not the most visually pleasing guy to watch with his shot and the way he drives and jumps and passes. But I think the coaches, you've had a couple coaches now that have played him significant minutes. He is not afraid to get out and run in transition. I love his couple steps.
This coaching group loves.
Yeah. And he gets out and goes. And when our transition game gets up to speed, you're going to see a lot of pitch aheads for him on the wing to go in and either, dump it off for a big trailing or go in and lay it in. And I also think they like him driving the basketball. I thought our point guards were very hesitant in turning the corner on ball screens. And hopefully that's just part of getting things going this season. But I think they like the fact that he can get downhill. The game of basketball is guard oriented and downhill. So I think Galloway's minutes are going to be 14 to 18 minutes because of the fact that he can create for others. He had a couple sloppy turnovers, but I like Trey. And I think he's a non-stat kind of guy. That it creates stuff for the offense that don't show up in stats or that a lot of us don't really see sometimes. And a lot of teams have those guys.
Yeah, I would just say about him, if he could shoot threes consistently, he'd be starting, I think, because of what he can do for this team. And that's, an issue. And he needs to be able to knock down shots from the outside, because what happened last year when he would come in when he couldn't shoot, teams would just back really far off him and essentially dare him to shoot the ball. And he did a couple times, and we would all scream about it. But, that's something that needs to develop for him. And it's a common theme with some of the guys in this program is you got to hit shots. You got to be a balanced player. You cannot be an unbalanced player and be successful in college basketball. So for Trey, that's the next evolution of his game. But when he's in there, he's great in the open court. He's great in transition. And when he's got a driving lane, he's excellent at doing that and delivering a pass or finishing at the rim. He's a good finisher too. So he's got elements of his game that could really help this team, but he's got to be a more well-rounded player. And that goes for, a lot of other guys as well. They have to be a threat from the outside to balance out what you do well and to be able to get to what you do well.
Yeah, I think for a team that clearly looks comfortable having different guys bring the ball up the floor, getting a rebound and going. I think we saw Race do that a little bit. Parker Stewart brought it up a time or two. I don't think necessarily labeling him as a point forward is even necessary, because I think when opportunities exist, it seems to be preached to just go. I think what he, at this point, until he can consistently knock those shots down, is focus on doing what he does well, which is being able to attack closeouts and create things for others, not necessarily doing that to score and being a guy. So if they're able to, make that next pass, as Coach talked about earlier, swing the ball around, that opens up driving lanes for somebody like him who, while he goes in the air, maybe a little bit too much to pass for my liking, is a guy who's been able to find people and maybe can set up other guys who are more adept at shooting than he is at this point in his career.
He's got that wrong foot game. Likes to drive in, go up that wrong foot old man game. That's just so weird to look at with regular college basketball.
All right, next question. I'll kind of lump these together. Jeffrey asked, why didn't Logan play given the fact that Durr was unavailable? And Sarah asked, do you know anything about Christian Lander's status? Any thoughts about his role on the team? So I kind of lumped these together because they're more role-based. Ryan, I'll throw those to you first.
Well, I think with Trish Jackson-Davis played 37 minutes. That's why you didn't see Logan dunk him. And I guarantee you the coaching staff.
That's not what you want, but that's what that's what was
the coaching
needed,
staff did not want to play Trace Jackson-Davis more than 30 minutes in that game. That was probably the absolute ceiling. And maybe if it was going great, play him 25. But I think you would have seen Logan dunk him if the game stayed at 20 points. But it got close, so Trace had to play most of the second half. And I think in the first half he played a lot because they were establishing themselves and getting a lead. And you want to keep working that until you don't need it anymore. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. But I think we'll see Logan in some of these earlier games with Michael Durr out, and we'll have to, just because he's extra fouls. But I think Logan's, I think it's worth noting. I think Logan's a bit of a project, and he's going to be worked on. I think he'll be playing next year a lot, but he's got to develop. He's got to be a little stouter. He's got to be a little bigger and stronger. Not unusual for a freshman big man to need to bulk up a little bit. So I don't think there's anything wrong with where he's at. I think he's at exactly where we expected him to be at. But that's probably why you didn't see him, is because the game got close and you needed your star player to step up. And of course he did late. So that's why, as far as Christian Lander, I think, again, it's a similar answer. Is it the way the flow of the game was? There just wasn't a spot for him. And Mike Woodson played, I believe 9 players played. And I bet Christian was probably the 10th guy. And, as these games, and what Christian Lander has to do, and it's very simple. He's going to get opportunities to play in games that are not particularly close. And he's got to earn it in practice, first of all. You feel like that's and everybody within the program is kind of saying the right things, that, hey, he's getting better. He's doing much better. It's just a process. But when he gets on the court during a game, he's just got to show it. He's just got to show it, whether that's setting other people up, whether that's finally hitting some jumpers, whether that's, playing defense really well or something. He's got to show it when he gets on the floor. And he hasn't done that yet. And so I do think the kid has incredible vision. I think he's an incredible ball handler. But again, as we talked about with Trey Galloway, you've got to balance your game. You've got to have balance to your game. You can't just do one thing well. A perfect example, a guy like Race Thompson. He could do multiple things well. That's why you have him on the floor as much as you do. He can rebound, defend. He is a smart passer on offense. He can post up and score inside, whatever. The only thing he's missing right now is a consistent jump shot. But those are the guys that are winning players. Those are the guys that win games for you, are the well-rounded guys who can do multiple things. Now, every team, well, except for Indiana right now, but every team has a guy who's just a shooter, like maybe plays some defense, but he's just a shooter. Those guys help you win games too. But if you want to play more, you've got to be well-rounded and have different aspects to your game where you can contribute in multiple ways to winning games. And that's just where we're at right now with a few of these guys. They've got to round out their games.
I thought, before I go to the next question for you, Coach, I think a little bit with Duncombe in particular, Eastern Michigan, not too big, so you could afford to play a Geronimo at the 4, even though he's not as big. I think you could get away with some of those other lineups, and so I thought that probably contributed to it a little bit as well. But they don't want to be playing Trace 37 minutes a night, that's for sure. Coach, I'll throw this one to you. This is from Bill. What was the most common causes for IU to blow big leads last year? And did you feel like you saw the same thing reappear in Tuesday's game versus Eastern Michigan, or was there something else at play that night? How would you step back and assess that one with a couple days to think on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of a difficult question to answer. Confidence is not just shooting the basketball. You got to learn how to win, and then you got to believe you're going to win, and then you got to know what to do to win. And what happened in my mind last year, if I have to recall it, is the teams just when things started going bad, there was some doubt that crept in. And when you start doubting, you start thinking. When you start thinking, you don't let your athleticism. There was not necessarily, if you want to call it a killer mentality or put the foot on the gas mentality when you had leads. And it just seemed like this for many years when things took a turn for the South, everyone kind of, took a step back. And yeah, it felt that way. I don't know if it was. It could have just been a kid got hot and Indiana missed shots. But part of what I think the fan base, including this guy, probably went through is, oh no, not this stuff again. And so it looked familiar. I don't know if it was, and really Coach Woodson and staff would be the only ones to know the kind of the true evaluation of what happened. But it sure started to feel like, the Michigan State game up 15 and you lose a key game and, all of the things that we've gone over and over again. So the hope is that this was just abnormal and first game jitters and things like that. And it was a perfect storm that the kid got hot at the time. Indiana did not. And this is not going to happen again too often. But basketball is a game of runs. It just happened to be kind of a negative run impact on the Hoosiers in game one. It would have been nice to win 3 or 4 games and then have that bad performance rather than the bad performance on night one.
Yeah, Brian, anything you saw with that in terms of letting the lead slip?
Well, last year, towards the end of the year, it just felt like there was a disconnect somewhere. And we later learned that it was, mostly a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players and what the coaching staff wanted and what the players were feeling about that. So, yeah, I think that feeling wasn't there this time. It felt like everybody was bought in.
Right.
I just think there was a relaxing. They just relaxed. They got up 20. The crowd was going. Miller Kopp hit that shot at the end of the first half while getting fouled. It was they had some momentum. They started the second half well, and then I just think guys relaxed. They forgot that you can't relax in a basketball game. It was the first game of the year. You can't relax, and the crowd was cheering. They got excited. Some more guys come in, start playing, and you just lose that killer instinct. And then the killer instinct, sort of came back at the end a little bit, but that's all I think it was. And so I don't think it compared to last year or the last couple of years where they would blow leads at all. With what would happen when they blow leads the last couple of years is they just didn't know what to do on offense. And they didn't have a clear picture of what to do on offense. Now, there was some of that yesterday, but I didn't feel like it was because of a disconnect between what, people want, what the coaching staff wanted and what the players were doing. I just felt like it's the first game in a new system. They're maybe feeling their way out. And look, as the shot quality numbers showed, they just missed a lot of good shots. Now they got to make those. I mean, that's not an excuse. They got to make those, but some nights you just miss good shots, and hopefully this is not a trend. Hopefully it's just first night jitters, first night adrenaline. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in game 2. I don't want to be at the Tonsoni house tomorrow night if things go south.
I'll be calm. It's my birthday. You got to learn how to win, Ryan. Teams got to collectively know each other, know where to go and how to run stuff. And that's a process as well. And that just can't be flipped on. So I'm hoping that was the cause of the second half.
All right. Next one is from Jeff. With all the spacing that we did on offense, looks like our offensive rebounding was missing in large portions of the game. When everyone is spaced out of the lane and almost everyone with the green light to chuck up threes whenever they're open, how do you maintain the capability to offensive rebound? So, Ryan, is that how do you view that? I mean, what I would say to start is, to some extent, that's a philosophical thing in terms of the way that you want to run offense and things like that. So you'll have teams, Wisconsin, a lot of years would basically just abandon the offensive glass in order to not get beat
Yeah.
back down the floor defensively. And you can still have an efficient offense while not collecting a ton of offensive rebounds. But I don't know necessarily, again, I would say we haven't seen enough of this team and this staff to know whether that's really a truly conscious choice of something that they don't want to do or things like that. But any thoughts on the offensive rebounding and just kind of the philosophy around that from your perspective?
Yeah, it was non-existent. They had 5 the entire game, and so I don't know how many second chance points. They
No
had.
shortage of opportunities though, given the shooting. So at least
Yes,
you're giving yourself chances to get it. That's for sure.
I tend to think with Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis, they're going to get offensive rebounds. But I don't know if they're making a conscious choice to get back on defense, as their priority and not sending some people to crash the glass. And I don't know. We haven't seen enough of this team. And we said in the offseason, we haven't seen this team yet. We don't know what this team's going to be. So it's sort of like, this is game 1. Maybe this was just guys not getting to the ball fast enough, and they'll look at it on film and, make that a point of emphasis. But yeah, it was certainly non-existent. And that's, when you've got 2 good big men like Trace and Race, do you feel like you should do better than that on the glass? But I don't know what the philosophy is with a spread out offense. It is certainly harder than if you have two bigs in the post. But I will say that teams with wide open offenses get offensive rebounds. I mean, they find ways. They send guys to the glass on shots, and maybe that's something these guys aren't used to doing because they weren't used to shooting a lot of threes. But yes, the guys need to crash the glass if we're going to get offensive rebounds. And there's some teams that, hey, as soon as the shot, you're running back on defense. You're not letting transition baskets happen, and that can be a philosophy. So I don't know.
Probably something we need to watch tomorrow. That's a good point to try to pick up what the philosophy is too. And, and the other thing is, Miller Kopp and Parker Stewart are out there to shoot. I don't know if they have explosive ups. And sometimes offensive rebound, and it's just go sky and get something. We got 2 guys who can do it, and now you stretch that 4 out a little bit. It's a longer run for him to go get it if the ball, is shot on a similar side. And, you can still rebound without having great jumping ability.
Agreed.
But
it's all about positioning and desire.
Yeah.
It's positioning and desire.
It also helps to just be able to say, go get the ball at the college level, And I think how many rebounds is just someone the ball goes and you out jumps. That's what Geronimo does. Geronimo just goes, gets it. I'm sure he blocks out. I'm not saying he doesn't, but he can get rebounds that a lot of people can't get because he can just go get it. And we don't have a lot of those guys right now, in my opinion. That could be – I'm just trying to reach for some reasons of why that might have been.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it to me is a little bit a bet on the shooting, which I'm not sure many people are wanting to do that. I was just kind of looking through a little bit on KenPom. So like Creighton, as an example, is a team that routinely over the last – handful of years has rated pretty low in offensive rebound percentage. The difference is their offense still ends up being efficient and has been in the top 25 in efficiency, fairly consistently, but their effective field goal percentage is routinely in the top 20 of the country. So, maybe we'll find out whether that's the philosophy going in, and then the shots don't start to fall. Then you got to adjust the philosophy to account for that. We'll kind of see that's part of what goes into early season. So I don't know that that's something they're willfully abandoning. But placing at this point, I think it would be reasonable to question anything that places a lot of the eggs in the basket of this team shooting the ball incredibly well based on what we've seen.
We don't want to line up with Justin Smith back in at the 3 and having 3 guys who just go get a lot of offensive rebounds, chuck and rebound. I don't want that. I don't want that anymore.
We could do that. All right, we'll finish up. Last question from IU-DSW. Question for Coach. What would you do when an opposing player is simply unstoppable like Farrakhan was on Tuesday night? And I would say that was really late on Tuesday night. He was imminently stoppable in the beginning of the game and he missed the first 13 shots. He said, I can remember a bunch of times when this has happened last year. So Audige with Northwestern, the guy for Wisconsin, the Big Ten tournament many years ago, I believe it was Rob Wilson was that guy's name. If Farrakhan does not suddenly hit everything he throws up, it's likely a comfortable win, and the toxic portion of the fan base does not absolutely lose their mind. So to get back to the regular question, so you see a guy, Coach, that's starting to heat up on the opposing team. What do you do to get him out of the rhythm that he has, in this case, very quickly gained?
Yeah, you take away his catches. You try to limit his catches. You try to, if he does catch the ball, get him in a spot that he's not comfortable, either further out or whatever. And then you decide if he's hurting you from 3, then you crawl up into him and you force him to become a driver, and you just don't let him get his shot gathered. Those are several things you can do. You got to be very careful about running guys at people, because that creates rotations on the backside. But if it got really bad, pros do it sometimes. You see it where people will run to and force the ball out of someone's hands. Those are the quick things that are in-game changes, maybe scouting report plans too. But you just got to try to not let him get the ball. And when he does, then just make him as uncomfortable as possible and contest shots and hope that he cools off.
When I played, my coach would tell me, rough that guy up. Not don't hurt him, bump him off cuts, make him move, make him uncomfortable, get in his face, grab his jersey a little bit when he's running, grab his shorts as he's running, get
him frustrated.
Exactly. And make it so, little stuff that maybe the officials don't see, but if they were looking right at you, they might call a foul, but he comes off a cut, bump him a little, make him catch the ball. As you said, if he's going to catch it, make him catch it 3 steps further out than he wants to. That's what you do. You make a guy who's comfortable uncomfortable. That's the way you do it. Maybe you foul him. Maybe you do foul him. You don't want to send him to the free throw line if they're in the bonus. You don't want to send him to the free throw line because he can keep hot. But bump him a little, make him off his game. Do anybody who's hot, just change what they're doing. Try and change what they're doing and make them a go. It's like when a pitcher's has a no hitter. Batters step out of the batter's box a lot more often. They try and make him change his rhythm. Try and make him if a guy gets on base, he tries to steal a base. Whatever you can do to knock that guy off his rhythm. It's the same in basketball. A guy gets hot, make him do whatever else, whatever he's not doing. Make him work for it much harder than he's working for it.
I mean, given some of Coach's comments about fouling the other night and his playing style in that regard, I'm sure he's right on board with what you said. So. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight on the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thanks to Bob Thompson for producing our music, and thanks to John Ringer of rigsdesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you actually tomorrow night on Friday after the IU Northern Illinois game. So until then,
take it from me, Freddie Mac Swain Jr. Get your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and man, go up and dump the ball. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
I like everything about that.
All right. That will do it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I think we hit.
We'll be back at it in
most of the questions. Yeah.
22 hours.
Probably be wrapping the postgame show right about the same time tomorrow. Game's at 7 Eastern, right? I feel like I should know that.
Yep.
I believe it's 7 Eastern. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, fellas, given that we got the back-to-backs, we'll shut things down and we'll be back at it tomorrow. So, thanks, everybody. Have a good Friday.
We'll see you guys.
And we will talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah. Later, everybody.